Hello everyone and welcome back to more Final Fantasy VII. We are at part 10. In the last part, we got on a boat heading to the next continent. There's Red 13 there. Always love that. And in this part, we're still on a boat to the next continent, but some stuff's about to go down, as you'll see here in a minute. We just gotta go back down and talk to Aerith as I struggle to get into the door. That's just great. But yeah. I completely lost my train of thought. This is quality commentary right here. Anyways, we're going back up. Now another area will open up to us where Barrett is, so we can see what he's up to. And once we get to the next continent, we're gonna get a bunch of stuff's gonna go down, of course. And there's Barrett looking in at the Shinra executives, and he's getting angry just looking at him. He hates the Shinra so much, especially after what they did to Avalanche. But yeah, we're also going to be, in the next continent, be getting a lot of new abilities, and of course I will show those off too. And now, as we see here, a stowaway has been found, and of course they assume it's one of them because they're the only stowaways on board. Or so they think. As they see here, we're about to be going back, meeting up together. As they see, everyone is here. So clearly none of them are the stowaways, so who's been caught? And then they start realizing quickly, is it Sephiroth? Are we going to see Sephiroth face to face for the first time since the confrontation with Cloud and him 5 years ago? That we still don't even know how it ended. This is getting interesting. Anyways, let's get my party back together, and then we're gonna do some awesome menuing that's gonna get them all re-equipped and all that. So that's always a fun time, because I gotta get everybody re-equipped with all their best stuff and get their materia all sorted out. Because we got a bunch of new stuff since we last had the party all together, so that's a fun time. But I've always loved this part of the game because it's very unexpected to be encountering the villain like this, and it's surprising, and it's also cool. We're about to get to minor spoilers. We're about to get to a very cool boss fight up here. But anyways, yeah, I'm just re-equipping everyone, making sure everybody's got a materia I want on them. Like I said, I'm mainly focusing, giving Cloud a lot of purple materia. Because, I don't know why I did that. Giving Cloud a lot of purple materia, because, actually I do know why. The Chocobo lure, I want to level up faster, so I'm more likely to run into Chocobos. That's for later. In Disc 2, we're going to be doing a pretty extensive side quest involving Chocobos, so I want to be sure I can catch them pretty easily. But you can run into random battles down here. I cut them all out because it's all enemies we've seen before. But yeah, we're about to be getting to a pretty cool boss fight here. And as we see, everybody here is dead, so this is not good, basically. And there's also an item over here. This is a new weapon for Yuffie that I think I equip onto her. I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yeah. No, I don't. Oh, I see what I'm doing. I'm rearranging material. It's been a few days since I recorded this, so I actually don't remember everything that I did. Usually I will record the voiceover just after I record the footage. I record in 3-part increments, so about an hour and a half to 2 hours of recording time, and then I'll go in and edit it all and separate it into parts. And of course I record in 30-minute increments for each part, but then I'll edit it all out immedately there, and then record the voiceover immediately. So usually what I've done is still fresh on my mind. But actually, I recorded this and edited it, the footage, about 2 days ago, so I might be forgetting some stuff that I did. So just bear with me. Like I said, this is very high quality professional commentary. We got some enemies here. You know, Matra Magic at this point in the game does wonders against enemies like this. So just use that and they'll go down pretty quick. I think just one more fire spell is going to do it here. Beautiful. Perfect. But yeah, just bear with me. I appreciate you watching at all. If you're watching this, thank you. Yeah, this, like I said, this is not heavily scripted. I kind of come up with some things that I want to talk about in each part, but for the most part, it's just kind of me rambling on and talking about moments in the game. But anyways, that's not Sephiroth. That guy is just dead. So that's not good. But, uh-oh. This is really not good. After a long sleep, the time has come. It looks a little goofy now, but I still think that's pretty cool. Just he just comes up through the floor. And Sephiroth's kind of in his own world at this point. But anyways, there he goes. He's just flying off and leaving a little boss fight for us. This is part of Jenova. If you remember, Jenova was that freaky alien that may or may not be an ancient. The ancients are aliens, but Jenova may or may not be an ancient that we found in the Shinra headquarters that then Sephiroth found out is his mother, and then went and took her to, you know, do things with. He was trying to find the promised land with her, reclaim the planet. That's all we know so far. His plans are much more sinister than that, as we'll find out. But for now, that's all we know. But this is Jenova's theme playing right here, and oh man, this is a great battle theme. I love Jenova's theme a lot. It's just, there's something about it. It's just so unique. But anyways, this is actually the first fight that I would say, if you aren't prepared, this fight can kind of fuck you up. So just be careful. Just heal when you get too low of health, because as you see, Jenova has some attacks that can hit pretty fucking hard, and she also has a move, well, she also has stop that can just freeze a character in their tracks. So as you see, Cloud was frozen for a while there, so you just gotta kind of be careful about that, because if she happens to freeze your healer, then, well, you're in trouble. So just be careful. Just hit her really hard with limit breaks and all that. Try to kill her as fast as possible, because you know, the longer you're alive, the more likely you are to die. I think that's a general thing about life in general. That's a bad thing to say. Anyways, yeah, just hit her as hard as you can. You don't have a ton of abilities at this point. You have quite a few, but not like an ass load like you will later. So, you know, your strategies can't be too varied here. It's basically just, you don't have like buffing and debuffing really yet. So really the strategy is just hit her as hard as you fucking can. And she is going to try to cast Stop on Barret here, but I believe she misses. Yep. I remember some stuff. As you see, they're not even at that low of health, but I'm having Barret cast Cure just in case, because sometimes she likes to do multiple moves in one turn, and sometimes she likes to target just one person over and over, which can drain your health fast, so just watch out for that. This fight isn't like impossible by any means, but it's the first fight in the game that I think actually, like I said, oh, well, Bio doesn't do shit. It's the first fight in the game that actually can, I think, really mess you up if you aren't well prepared for it or aren't at the proper level, which is why I'm kind of grateful that while looking for Yuffie, I had to level grind a bit in part 8, and I cut it all out, but it took me a long time to find Yuffie, so it actually got me up a few levels, which I'm grateful for, because it made this boss fight far more easy. Not that you couldn't do it at the lower level, it's just, you know, like I said, in this game, you don't have to grind, but it certainly doesn't hurt either, like in any RPG, except maybe Final Fantasy VIII. Anyways, that's the fight. There we go. Beautiful. Great battle theme. And we got a level up for Cloud, and Yuffie's getting close to 1, so that's great. And we got the White Cape, and I believe the White Cape prevents Frog and Small, which will be useful in an area that we will be going to in a few parts that has frog enemies that love to turn you into a frog. So give that to someone to prevent them from being turned into a frog, and you can stay out of Donkey's infamous frog lock, as he calls it, which I always thought was hilarious. But anyways, Barrett is very confused, as is everyone, because it's like, well, that wasn't Sephiroth, that was Genova that we just fought. Sephiroth just kind of flew off, and as we found out, it was actually a piece of Genova's arm. Jumping ahead a bit, because it's not really a spoiler, it's pretty heavily implied even at this point. Genova is a creature that can make people, it messes with people's minds. It has special powers that she can manipulate people's minds, make them see things and, think things that aren't really happening. And that's an important plot element for later. So that's why it was such a big monster that we were fighting. There was just kind of seeing something that wasn't really there. But Genova is still very powerful, so, But yeah, anyways, we are going to keep going. We are about to get to the next continent here, where, some more great stuff is going to go down. So that's a fun time. We're going to be going to Beach Town here, as you'll see. That's always an area that sticks out to me a lot in this game. Like I said, one thing I really appreciate about this game, especially on repeat playthroughs, is just how varied each location is. In the earlier Final Fantasies, the NES and Super Nintendo ones, towns stood out by what happened there, and they do in this game too. But all the towns in those games kind of look the exact same. They have the exact same building structures, like the textures on them are all the same. And it's beautiful sprite work, of course, especially in 6, but some towns in 6 really kind of blend together visually, and in this game that's not the case at all. Like, everywhere you go has such a distinct look to it. It really helps to make the world feel alive, and that's a huge advantage from the pre-rendered backgrounds that those give. It lets them do things like this that could not have been done in earlier games. But anyways, the gang is calling Barrett cute in his sailor suit. And Cloud is going to say one of my favorite lines in the game here: "You look like a bear wearing a marshmallow." That's perfect. And Barrett's getting all defensive. I love Barrett. I love this entire cast, honestly. Yeah, there's not really a character that I just don't like in this cast, which is a very, very huge accomplishment for a JRPG. Only the best JRPGs are able to manage that. There's almost always, in games like these, a character that is at least mildly annoying, and that's just not the case here. I don't find any of these people annoying at all. Of course, they're flawed people. They're very flawed people, but none of them ever become unlikable or annoying. Cloud comes close at the beginning, but it doesn't take very long for him to start opening up a bit more. And also the goofball things that happen with him and Aerith in Midgar are great, so that makes up for it. Like I said, Cloud is not the typical, like, edgelord anime protagonist that everybody thinks he is. At least in this game. In the extended universe, they kind of made him that, but in this game he is not that at all. Anyways, the Shinra executives are here now, as they're kind of assessing the situation that they found out Sephiroth was on the ship along with Cloud and the gang. And Rufus is not happy with this news, so he tells Heidegger to, get on it, to stop loafing around, and tells him that he messed up. Which, Heidegger doesn't really like that very much. He has some anger issues he's got to work out. And we got the slowest walking animation ever here. He's in the background it says helipad, but it also, because of it's kind of low res, it kind of also just looks like hellpad, and hellpad. That's all I got to say about that. But anyways, we are in this wonderful town now. Beautiful. It's just this nice little beach town, and like I said, it's so visually distinct from everything else. And here I am. That big dog talks like a human. I'm waiting. I want to kick the ball. Red 13 didn't like that very much. Just kicked a ball in his face. I'm checked to see if there's new materia here, but there is not. We bought all we needed in Junon. Basically, my rule is I like to have pretty much one of every materia that we can get easily. I miss some materia in this game. I will miss some materia in this game, I'm sure. This is not a 100% run, like I said, not even close. If it was, I've already missed like 5 things. I just don't find that to be the best way to play this game, the best way to enjoy this game at all. If you're going for 100%, if you're a completionist and you like to do that, great. It's just not for me. To me, trying to get everything is kind of more of a pain than it is fun. So I just get what I find useful and leave the rest to, I don't know, exist elsewhere. Anyways, as we see here on the beach, there happens to be Hojo here. And this is always kind of a what the fuck moment. He's just hanging out with a bunch of girls on the beach. And yeah, they're even the gang is kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? He's getting a tan, of course. He's a very tan person, as you can see. Hojo's kind of a maniac, and this is kind of the start of that. He doesn't seem to care at all about anyone or anything. He left the Shinra after the incident in the headquarters. He's just off on his own, but also he's still very focused on his experiments more than anything else. And even Aerith kind of introduces herself here in a bit, and as we'll find out, Hojo doesn't even remember her name. He's so focused on his experiments over anything else, he doesn't really care at all about being a decent human being. Like I said, there's a theory, it's hardly even a theory, it can be just taken as fact based on what the game presents, that Hojo really is the main villain of this game. Because, like I said, pretty much everything that happens in this game, as we'll find out, can in some way, shape, or form be linked back to him. So, that's great. He's a great guy. Anyways, he's just telling us to head west. This is just our cue on, the game telling us where we need to go next, which is west. Yeah. This is a very... Like I said, the story, for the most part, after the explanation of the Nibelheim incident from Cloud, the story kind of stops for a bit. And I don't say that like it's a bad thing, just they have the goal in mind. They're chasing after Sephiroth, so now it's just like, let's enjoy this journey. Let's, we get some nice character moments along the way, some subtle foreshadowing, some not so subtle foreshadowing. It's more just about, this part of the game is definitely much more about just the journey rather than the story itself. And I love when games do that. This is one of those games that really feels like an adventure. And I love that about it. It's the only Final Fantasy that I think really captures that spirit, because most Final Fantasies often like to switch around characters a lot or go to different scenarios. Like Final Fantasy VI loves the party switching thing a lot. And this game feels much more almost focused in comparison. Not that 6 isn't focused, but this is just much more like, this is Cloud's journey, like Cloud and the gang's journey all the way through. And that really helps the sense of just adventure. Like they're really going on this big journey through this world together. 6, like I said, they kind of split off a little too much for 6 to really feel like that. And the other games kind of don't feel like that either for whatever reason. 7 is really the only Final Fantasy that I think really captures that spirit. And I don't really know exactly why, because it's not the only Final Fantasy to kind of focus on a singular party all the way through. 5 does it, 4 does it, 15 does it. It's just this one, I guess, does it the best. To me, anyway. Of course, there are plenty of people who will argue that this game is an overrated piece of shit, to which I will come back with, but it's good. If you think this game is overrated, that's totally acceptable, because, like, well, I guess you need to define overrated. Overrated in the sense that people say this is the best game ever made, then, yeah, I would say it's overrated. I don't think this is the best game ever made, but I don't think it's overrated when people say this is a fantastic video game and a fantastic RPG. I don't think that's overselling it at all. I think it is a fantastic RPG and a fantastic video game. The thing about this game that tells me that it's good is even its detractors, even people who say it's overrated, still have things that they like about it. Some will just outright say, like, it's overrated, but it's still good. And a lot of people, when they think something's overrated, they kind of like to hate on it. But the fact that most people who hate this game can't even really do that tells me that it's quality. Of course, you know, Final Fantasy is such a good franchise that there's like 5 different ones that are consistently called the best. This one is thrown around a lot as the best. 6 is thrown around a lot as the best. I see 4 thrown around sometimes. 9 is thrown around a lot. 10 is thrown around a lot. There's a lot of, like, best Final Fantasy games. I also love that egg creature. Just going off on a tangent. That egg creature is great. He likes to puke up his sons. That's probably the worst way I could have worded that. Anyway, but yeah, and when it comes to my favorite is this one. I think 7 is my favorite. It's the one that I think about the most. It's the one where I'm like, if I want to play a Final Fantasy game, this is the one that I immediately think of. Which one I think is the best, though? That's a bit of a tougher conversation because, you know, favorite is a very subjective thing. But when you talk about the best, that means you kind of have to look at the games from a more objective standpoint. And I think this game is up there. But as I said, this game is not perfect. It has some flaws. I've been kind of over them before. Some of the mini games are hit and miss. The pre-rendered backgrounds can be a little annoying to navigate sometimes. It's not perfect. And also, the story sometimes can be convoluted, and I know that's a point of contention for a lot of people. I think it's great, but still. So when it comes to what is the best Final Fantasy, it kind of depends on what you yourself are looking for. If you're looking for a very gameplay-focused video game with very deep RPG mechanics, I would recommend Final Fantasy V, especially since that one has such a great challenge, and because that one just offers so much freedom in how you go about it. If you're looking for a more story-focused Final Fantasy, I would highly recommend Final Fantasy IX. Or this one too, but 9 is probably the most of the original games that the original creator Hironobu Sakaguchi had such a major creative role in. 9 is by far the most story-heavy Final Fantasy game, until you get to the ones after that, where I would argue probably 10 is about equal to 9 when it comes to story. Maybe not quality-wise, but I love 10's story, but that's besides the point. But just with the amount of game that is story. But yeah, if you're looking for story content over gameplay, and they just killed Cloud, like they didn't even give a fuck, I would recommend Final Fantasy IX. Also, not to say 9 is a bad as a video game at all, because it's very solid. It's just a little... There's a little less freedom offered. It's a little simpler. You go back to a more traditional class system in 9, which isn't a bad thing at all. It's just, for me, I much prefer, when it comes to gameplay, I really value the freedom of customization that games like Final Fantasy V or 7 offer you. Or even 6 to an extent, but 6 not quite as much. 6 is more just party switching and stuff, because in 6, every character can learn every spell like in 7, but 6, each party member still has abilities that are assigned to them, which is means that there's a lot of party switching and stuff, so your party can't be quite as diverse as it can in the later parts of 7, but still, there's still quite a bit of freedom there. I would say if you want the most well-rounded Final Fantasy game, 6 is probably the way to go. I think that's the reason you'll see on top 10 lists of like best Final Fantasy games, you'll often see 6 top the list. I don't think 6 does anything the best, but 6 does everything really well. It's definitely the most well-rounded Final Fantasy game. It also has a really good villain. In fact, just to kind of contradict myself, that's the one thing 6 does do the best. 6 has the best villain of the whole series. Kefka is crazy. But anyways, we are at these train tracks now, and this is a little thing that you have to do here. You either hold all the way left or hold all the way right and just mash the circle button, or whatever button it tells you to mash depending on what version you're playing, and then you'll get an item. I actually missed the item on the right because I fuck up the next 2 times. I cut those out though to save time. But yeah, so you get some treasures here. That's a wizard staff. That's a good weapon for Aerith. But yeah, still, I highly recommend you play. Oh, here I am speeding through menus. It takes me like way too long to menu here for some reason. I'm just indecisive. Anyways, yeah, if you want something a bit more modern in your Final Fantasy, I would recommend 10. I don't know what I was doing there. Even though, disclaimer, and this is a very, very controversial opinion, I don't like 10 that much. And it's weird because most people's opinion of 10 is they love the gameplay, but most people's problem with 10 is the story, people who don't like 10, from what I can gather. But I'm the opposite. I think the story in 10 is fantastic. I just think the game is kind of bleh. But that's a very hot take. So because of that, I don't think it's as good as some of the earlier ones. But if you want probably the best starting point and the most well-rounded Final Fantasy, I would say is 6. The only issue with 6 is it's a little buggy, and it's also really, really easy. Like, you can break that game in half just by looking at it funny. So just keep that in mind if you play 6, because there are multiple ways in that game to just win. There are multiple just win buttons in Final Fantasy VI, which, like I said, that makes it a good starting point. But at the same time, if you are accustomed to JRPGs, that might be a little bit like, okay, what the hell? But 6 has a very good story, and the gameplay mechanics, I think, are interesting enough to forgive the easy difficulty. And I would recommend not trying to break it your first playthrough, not, using the exploits and stuff, and just playing it how it was intended to be played, because there it's still pretty easy, but it's a much more balanced game. But anyways, what we're doing here is we crawled up here and killed these birds' mom. So now they just don't have a mother now. That's awful. But we got 10 Phoenix Downs, so that's nice. Oh. That kind of hurts. But at the same time, Phoenix Downs. But yeah, when it comes to my personal recommendations, I can't recommend this game enough to play. I think this is, to me, this is the most enjoyable Final Fantasy overall. Even if I'm aware that probably on an objective standpoint, it's not the strongest. Still definitely up there as one of the strongest, but maybe not quite. I think on an objective level, probably 6 and 9 are better, but not by a lot. And even still, I love this game, man. I can't recommend this game enough. I think this is just such a top tier JRPG. And I know a lot of people think this game is kind of all flash and no substance, which is very false. And this is kind of an argument. This is why style is important in movies and video games, because people were drawn into this game from the FMVs and the backgrounds, and they were like, oh my god, video games look like this now? This is crazy. It looks like a movie. Back in 97, the CGI FMVs were insane. So they were like, this looks like a movie, this is insane. So they were drawn in by that. But then the reason this game has such a long-lasting impact and people still love it today is because of the substance. The game itself is great, the story is great. So style and substance are both very important. And just because something has style does not mean that it lacks in substance. I know people will throw around, like, people say Persona 5 is just style over substance just because the game has style, and that's very false. Persona 5 has a ton of substance to it. I intentionally get this thing to blow up on me just to show it off. It ends up almost killing Yuffie though, but yeah, those enemies can blow up on you, so you gotta kill them fast. But yeah, so style is very important, because style is what's going to draw people in to begin with. Like, the reason I played Persona 5 initially was because of the style. I saw like the all-out attack in Smash Brothers, and I was like, shit, I want to check this game out. And then I did, and then what kept me invested in the game was the substance of it, which it's full of. This game is kind of the same way. It drew people in from the style, and then kept them because there's a lot of substance in the story and the gameplay. But anyways, we are now in North Coral, which the people here seem to immediately recognize Barrett, so something's happened here. And also the town, is just this dump, so something's happened here. A walking death sentence. And now they seem to be blaming Barrett for why the town is the way that it is. So, and Barrett doesn't even seem to be fighting them back. He's just kind of accepting it. So clearly there's some history here. Something happened. And yeah. And Barrett just openly admits it. He's like, yeah, this is my fault. This is, I caused this. There's some new items here. I buy, a tent and a phoenix down, but when it comes to weapons and armor and stuff, there's not really anything new here. I buy some status healing items just in case. Like I said, status elements aren't a huge deal in this game, but they're just good to have, just in case there's an emergency or whatever. But yeah, you see they have carbon bangles. I think this is the first time to have carbon bangles. We're this far away from Midgar. So steal the carbon bangles early, basically. They're good. But yeah, we will actually be finding out more about what happened here and Barrett's relationship to this town in the next part. So that's going to just about do it for this part. I'm just going to be leaving the town to save really quick, and that'll be the end of it. I hope you guys once again are enjoying this series. We are actually, a good chunk in now. We still got, of course, a ways to go. We're not even close to through with disc 1 yet, but still, I hope you guys are enjoying this series. Like I said, we're 6.5 hours into this game. That's a good chunk in, because we still got a ways to go. Some crazy stuff is coming. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for more Final Fantasy VII.